Let's bring in our first guest, a man who says he's going to vote yes to forming that commission, Congressman Tom Malinowski, Democrat from New Jersey. Congressman, the bill to form a Capitol riot commission has bipartisan authors, has bipartisan support in the House, and seems to have bipartisan support in the Senate. So what's your reaction to seeing first Kevin McCarthy, who reportedly got all the compromises he wanted in a deal, and now Mitch McConnell not just opposing it, but whipping votes to try and block a commission?
It's mystifying to me. This is something that has bipartisan support in the country. Most importantly, we all saw what happened on January 6th. We saw an insurrection against the government of the United States, an effort by a violent mob that injured dozens and dozens of police officers to break into the Capitol to stop us from doing our constitutional duty. And, what's happened in the last few weeks is that the National Republican Party has been not just shutting down and silencing, but expelling effectively people like Liz Cheney and others who think that we can't just move on or lie about what happened, who actually think that we need to enforce the rule of law in our country and tell the truth. So, look, we're going to vote on this today. We'll get a bunch of brave, independent-minded Republicans who are going to stand with us and with the American people. And McCarthy and McConnell are just going to have to answer to their conscience and to history.
McCarthy and McConnell are both saying that a commission would or could interfere with other investigations. There's one going on in the Senate and 400-plus criminal investigations being run by the Justice Department. How much credence, if any, do you give those complaints? And given that Republicans are, again, working to actively defeat this bill, which seems more likely, their answer, or that Republicans are just trying to protect their own?
I give absolutely zero credence to that. Look, we had a 9/11 commission after the horrific terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. No one said that Governor Tom Kean and Lee Hamilton, when they were investigating 9/11, that it was interfering with the criminal investigation that was happening at the same time, or with the work of our intelligence agencies, or with investigations or hearings being conducted by congressional committees. That's an excuse. Everybody here knows that. Republican members will privately acknowledge that in conversations with us. The reason the leaders are opposing this, well, number one, Trump opposes it, and they can't seem to break their abject allegiance, subservience to Donald Trump. And presumably, possibly in the case of someone like Kevin McCarthy, because they personally have stuff to hide. They don't want to have to testify before this committee about their role on January 6th. They'd rather just forget that this happened. But we can't forget. And Donald Trump won't let us forget, because he's out there busy trying to convince his followers, a substantial share of the Republican Party, that the rioters on January 6th were patriots and that the election was stolen, and we cannot let that stand.
Yeah, and that sense of hypocrisy coming from the GOP when it comes to the riot, there's many examples, but Georgia's Andrew Clyde may take the cake. In a hearing, he said the riot looked like a normal tourist visit, but there are photos of him helping to barricade the doors of the House chamber and looking none too secure while he was doing it. You hit on this just a moment ago, but do you really think the effort here is to try to make the riot disappear, just erase it from the history books?
Yes, and their own role in the riot, they want that erased from the history books. And you know what? Like, sometimes this argument that we need to move on and focus on other things and not on what's divisive, like, okay, that's sometimes a reasonable argument. But the problem is that there are other forces within the Republican Party that are not moving on. They are actively out there trying to persuade their base that the election was, in fact, stolen, that Joe Biden isn't president, that Donald Trump is coming back. It's incredibly dangerous. This lie, which led to violence on January 6th, over 100 police officers seriously injured, 2 claimed their own lives after this tragic event. That lie is still being spread by leaders within the Republican Party, and it could lead to violence again. So if that side's not moving on, we certainly cannot afford to allow the lie to stand.
The big lie, the Republican handling of the riot, the new voter restriction laws we're seeing in red state after red state, and a new CBS poll that shows almost half of Republican voters think it's more important to restrict voting than to try and win new votes on policy, combined with so many other headlines, has a lot of people worried for the strength and future of our democracy. Congressman, you and I have spoken many, many times over the years. You're a calm, rational voice. I've never heard you engage in what I would call bombast. How worried are you for the future of our democracy?
I'm worried. I'm worried. We need a healthy two-party system. Right? We need a conservative party in this country. I'm a Democrat. I disagree with Republicans on a lot of things, but we need a serious governing-oriented party that disagrees with Democrats. But that's not what they're becoming. Liz Cheney was a great example of a very conservative Republican who 90% of the issues thinks that I'm wrong, but she's interested in governing and she's a serious person. And her party is saying there's no place in our party for you anymore because they're not about policy. They have no platform. They're just about power and loyalty to this one crazy guy who's seething in Florida about his loss in the election. And they know they can't convince a majority of Americans to support that. They know they can't expand their base with that kind of message. And so instead, they're trying to shrink the electorate. They're trying to, instead of persuading more voters, they're trying to run elections with fewer voters because it's the only way that they can win. And yeah, that's a threat. Now, what can we do? Most important thing we can do about it, by the way, is just to continue our work governing this country for the American people. I'm focused on creating jobs here, not creating drama. I want to pass an infrastructure bill that builds the Gateway Tunnel in New Jersey and that puts our folks back home to work, fixing our transportation system and moving us from fossil fuels to clean energy and competing with China in the global economy. That's what we're focused on. And if we're successful in doing that, if we're successful in reforming our healthcare system, making it less expensive, then I don't think there's really much this strange new Republican Party that won't even have people like Liz Cheney or Mitt Romney in their ranks, the less they can do, I think, to hurt this country.
It does leave less oxygen to talk about specific issues, so I have a couple of issue-oriented questions for you. First of all, the threat posed by foreign hackers. Hackers led to the pipeline shutdown earlier this month, which sent people into a frenzy, happening more and more to more companies. We know hackers tried to get into state election systems, and there's a lot more and a lot worse they could do, like the power grid or the air traffic control system. Is hacking being addressed as a national security concern on par with the level of the threat that it poses? And how do we protect the nation and fight back against these hackers?
So yeah, this could have been a lot worse than it was. The pipeline service has been restored, fortunately, but you're absolutely right. We have a lot of critical systems in this country that are vulnerable. And it is disturbing that this company, this pipeline company, was not transparent with the U.S. government and with the American people about what was going on, about the level or lack thereof of their cybersecurity. So we're going to need to be requiring a lot more transparency and cooperation from the companies that run these critical systems. And President Biden issued an executive order a few days ago that will get us closer to that goal. We may need to consider legislation as well. And then finally, you mentioned these are international hacking groups. The group that was responsible for this latest attack is apparently based in Russia. The Russian government may or may not have been directly behind it, but I think that's a distinction without a difference. We need a new set of rules in the international community that say that if there are criminal organizations operating from your soil, engaging in these destructive hacking operations, and you don't take care of it, if you, the Russian government, for example, do not take care of it, then we're going to hold you, the Russian government, accountable. And we need the United States and our allies to come together on this, just like we came together in NATO decades ago, to say that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And we need to find ways to retaliate frankly, against governments that fail to meet their responsibility to take care of these things.
Congressman Tom Malinowski is a Democrat representing New Jersey's 7th District. Congressman, always enjoy our conversations, this one included. Thanks so much.
Thank you.